I never thought I would be the one with cancer. I heard of a lot of people with cancer, I've read a lot about it. I didn't have a full awareness of it, all the idiosyncrasies with it, but I never thought I would be the one with cancer.
As a filmmaker, I tell many stories, but this one was something special. This is the story of Andrew Church and his story of overcoming cancer.
Hey,
Good to see you, man.
Thank
How
you.
you doing?
You too. Yeah, great.
Thanks for your time.
Pleasure. Come on through.
Cheers. So Andrew, how about we start at the beginning? Can you take me back to life before cancer?
The day-to-day activity of running a business, educating people, working with organisations and companies, that was pretty important. The other side of what I was doing, I'd built a museum, war museum, from a collection that I'd had from over 10, 15 years, and then that drove a lot of interest. And then I thought, hey, this is a great community event. So there I had on one side a community event, which was my museum, building momentum, people coming in and really being changed by that. Then I was out there working with businesses and people and getting some change from that. So my day-to-day life was very focused on that. Basically, if you really want to put it down to one word or a few words, I was enjoying life.
There was always something going on. He travelled a lot. And when he was home, there was always something else that he was doing.
When I was working in the office, which technically was a rare event because I did a lot of travel, but I suddenly found I was getting very, very exhausted very, very easily and quickly. So I'd walk up the set of stairs to make a cup of coffee or have a cup of tea or lunch, and I was actually exhausted. One flight of stairs. And I thought, I walk every day. I used to be a bit of a fitness freak. I'm not now, but I should be all right. And I even had some staff members saying, something is going on, you better get a checkup. Looking at it now from this standpoint, I was in denial, let's be straight. But I lifted something heavy one day, I started to bleed.
I thought he might have ruptured something, maybe a hernia. I didn't know if they caused bleeding, but cancer never entered into my mind at all.
I went into the doctor and told her what had happened and the major bleed. Now, because it had settled down, even though it was that major that it went right through my trousers, in fact, the whole back of my trousers was red with blood. She did a check and just said, "Oh," was the word. And I went, "What?" She said, "There is a big lesion." That's what it was called at this point of time. She left me on the table to get organised, ran straight to the desk and said, "I'm recommending you to a surgeon, a colorectal specialised surgeon. Can you go this afternoon?" This was in the morning. I went, "This afternoon?" So I can go next week. "No, can you go this afternoon or tomorrow? Can you book in as soon as you can?" I walked out of the doctor's surgery still really not knowing the severity of that diagnosis. I was invited to go to a big event in Gosford City, and there they had announcements of all these awards of what people had achieved over the year, which was a very great night. But I got voted and then awarded the Citizen of the Year. So standing up there with a huge bunch of flowers, a trophy and certificates, and getting my wife up on the stage and having photos taken and all of that.
Nobody knew what we were going through, and they were congratulating Andrew, of course, but on the other side of that, we were in great pain. Yeah.
So I walk into the surgeon. This is the specialist, colorectal surgeon, specialist, sitting in the waiting room. And my wife and I went. She was concerned. I was concerned. That hype from the night before was all over. We sat in there waiting, and again, not really knowing.
Every body function was just going wild. It was quite a traumatic time. If we had to let ourselves go, we had to remain strong. I had to stay strong for him, and I had to keep it together. If I fell apart, he was really going to fall apart. So it was a matter of just sitting there and just concentrating on being positive and putting my faith in where I put it.
He called us in and we sat down and he said, "What's wrong? The doctors found a lesion. How do you feel?" I said, "No, actually, I feel quite good." So I said to him that it's probably the best I've felt for a long time. Well, I suppose I'm pretty hyped from the night before. Now, he's an expert. He does this every single day, day in, day out. In fact, he would be one of the top specialists on the coast if you put him in that category, and he is. So he checked and he said, "Come and sit down." And we sat down. He said, "It's cancer. You have bowel cancer." To be honest, those were probably the last words I remember of that particular meeting.
Andrew had what's called a rectal cancer, which is the rectum is the lowermost part of the large bowel. And bowel cancers, as I think everyone knows, can be deadly. It depends on how early or advanced they are when we find them.
And the surgeon was really good. He explained it well to us. But of course they have to tell you everything, and that can be a bit scary, really, because they tell you everything. As you know, they've got to tell you what could go wrong. And so we just had to go out of there believing that all would be well.
I remember walking out holding my wife's hand through the door of the building outside of the surgery, and she turned around and said, "Do you know what though? You're not alone. We're going to do every step of this together." My dream was that at 80 years old-ish, her and I would be just walking hand in hand along the beach when we're retired, relaxing, listening to the surf. We've said that since we've been married 33 years ago. And she said to me, "I don't want that stolen from us. There is no reason that should be taken from us. We can still be walking along the beach hand in hand at 80 years old. This doesn't have to be the end."
So it was never in our minds, consciously, that we weren't going to get through it. We tried to think of the end of it.
So she came alongside big time. As time progressed, I had another mate. He was great. He would text me every day. I'd wake up it wouldn't just be the morning, it would be the morning, it'd be lunchtime, bzzz, the phone rings, I look, I text, and it's got, "All will be well."
Well, all is well came because when I was diagnosed with a brain tumour, I didn't know what the journey was going to look like, but I just knew and had a complete conviction that at the end of the journey, all will be well. And that's what I stood on, for weeks and weeks and weeks. And, 12 years later, all is well. So I like to share that testimony with people when they're going through something.
I was scared and probably to the level of petrified. Really, it's a lot not knowing. Like, I've never been to hospital before.
Did you wonder if you were going to die, or did you?
Through that, the severity of the operation and what I was about to go through, there was still a high thought in my head that I wasn't going to wake up from this at all.
Neither of us had any idea of the magnitude of recovery that had to take place after the operation. We sort of saw the operation, yes, that's it, good, done. But the recovery on the other side was nothing what we expected.
The recovery was still tough. I mean, you think that it gets easier. It was really tough. Even to the stage where it was a victory. I just stood up for a split second before I collapsed, and that was victory number one.
I think a positive attitude certainly makes a big difference. You know, there's a lot to get over with and grapple with when it comes to bowel cancer. It's not only having major surgery and, in Andrew's case, having to live with a bowel bag for several months. It's also the emotional aspects that are associated not only with the physical insult of surgery, but grappling with the whole concept of I've got a cancer. And I think Andrew's certainly handled that extremely well, and he's very strong mentally, and he just, and that positive attitude, I would be certain, makes a difference in terms of your recovery.
As soon as I took the first couple of steps, I thought, I can do this. I got up during the night with my frame and walked around the block of the intensive care unit. The next day I was determined, and within 24 hours I was showered, shaved, and doing lap after lap after lap, because I discovered that if I started to really focus at this and get on top of this, I'm going to beat it. I'm going to win. So I really then started to get this desire to make it.
It was Valentine's Day, because it was the 9th of February that he had the operation. So the 14th of February, we went for a walk around the wards, around the aisles in the hallways in the hospital. And that was, yes, yeah, he'd been working on that because he wanted to take me for a walk. So that was a triumph in itself.
I changed a mindset then and said, I'm really going to make myself and push ahead with this. But it's funny in this journey, and it's not funny, but in this journey there is that cloud still that it wasn't over yet. I still had to have the test results back from the nodes, what's called the nodes that had been sent off to pathology. The results had to come back from that. So I had to wait for that still. So there was still a lot of waiting. There was still a lot of answers to come back.
So it all sounded wonderful. It sounded like it was all done and dusted, over with, got the cause out, and just recovery time now. So we were going along at home, and then I think it took about 4 or 5 days to get that result, and the surgeon rang and said there was one node affected.
I thought I'd beaten that cancer, but what this news came to me was that it was about to begin again, what was presented in the way of saying, you need chemo now, this cancer's got out.
What did you decide to do?
So I decided, not at that point, but not long after, that it was presented that I do chemo. There is also an option that you don't do chemo. It wasn't a quick thought. I thought long and hard about this and went down the road of saying, no, I'm not going to do the chemotherapy.
I was a little worried and disappointed about that, because we do have evidence that in certain situations with certain bowel cancers, chemotherapy is useful to try and increase the chances of a cure. And clearly in a young man, we want to do everything we can to maximise those chances. But all of this stuff has a slightly fuzzy edge to it. It's hard. I don't want to be hard line and say that someone has to do this or has to do that, because that's just simply not how it works. Chemotherapy, neither the surgery nor chemotherapy guarantee in Andrew's situation that he'll be cured. And he decided mindfully, after having sought the opinion of the appropriate specialists, that he didn't want to have it. And that needs to be respected.
I didn't want to do the chemotherapy in the sense that, yes, it was a low risk. I mean, nothing's low risk when it comes to cancer and life and death. But I chose that I would rather build the body up as a low risk with only one node microscopically infected or affected by the cancer cells, that if I built the body up, there is no reason why it couldn't at least keep it at bay or kill this other cell that could be floating around. I did not and would never judge anybody for saying yes, they would do it under any circumstances, and neither would I judge anybody who said they wouldn't do it under any circumstances. My personal decision was, I'm not going to do it under these circumstances. I'm going to go a different road.
Okay, not doing chemo for us meant not doing nothing. It meant, okay, we're going to apply the principles that I've learned in nutrition and health to combat this.
Moving forward, not doing the chemo was going to be, as it would be with chemo, is a lot of tests to keep an eye on what your body is doing. But it was also then to come up with a regime of saying, I'm going to exercise, keep healthy mind, healthy body, and really take a step forward and move as though I had complete control of this situation.
Did Andrew slow down through any of this time?
Well, obviously he slowed down a fraction because he couldn't go so fast. But he did way more than I wanted him to do, way more. He did photo shoots, he was writing his cookbook. If it had been me, I would have crawled into my backyard and just recovered peacefully and not done anything like that. But you can't stop him.
You wouldn't have even known Andrew had cancer because he just pushed through. And we were able to publish, we literally republished 3 of his business books. We just had the 4th business book go to bestseller just earlier this year. So Andrew has actually put through 4 best-selling books just through the year of 2016. We're planning a book launch tour. He's just on it. And you would have never known, not one bit, that Andrew had any kind of cancer. And he is incredible, and he's so inspiring, and he makes me want to work harder.
Oh, it looks so good. I remember shooting this for you. I was surprised at how determined Andrew was to get the shoot done despite the condition of his health. Like, putting myself in his shoes, I think if I was in that much pain, I would almost just expect everyone to understand that I would be in bed and recovering. But he had the determination to just power through and get the shoot done.
Yeah, I mean, I would never sit, and you don't judge anybody in their walks in cancer, but I have met a lot of people now, and I get people coming to talk to me a little bit and talking about it. And what I do find or notice with a lot of people is they do get caught up in the death sentence, and they're living in the death sentence. They're living in a prison cell rather than saying, hey, the sun's shining outside that prison cell. It's easy for me to say that, but it's not really, because I've done it. Mate, I've been in that prison cell, and I've been in that bed, and I've had the death threat right over me. In fact, I've had the knife up in the air with me laying down, and I've felt every bit of that. But the door isn't locked. You can get out through that door, and some people don't. Some people stay on that bed.
Andrew's forward thinking, always planning the future, always thinking of the next thing he was going to do, had a huge amount to do with his recovery. Because he wasn't sitting there moping around, being overcome by the symptoms on his body and the pain that he was going through.
If people have a very resigned attitude and an attitude of pessimism, it tends not to work in their favour long term. in terms of good outcome.
You know what? I think in a lot of ways, and this is probably a bit of a rough thing to say, but I think this was a wake-up call. This was like giving me a shake and saying, don't get absorbed in all the little things. Focus on what you want to achieve. Your family, you want to get books that are unwritten in your head, get them out there. Let's refocus your life, make it mean something, and make every day count, and even enjoy every day. If I'm driving in traffic, you stop for a second, you look at the sky and say, wow, isn't this beautiful? I mean, it gives you a whole different perspective on life.
A diagnosis of cancer is not a death sentence. It's absolutely not. You have choices. There are things that you can do.
I mean, let's face facts. I haven't got the all clear. I'm 12 months out of the initial surgery, and there is still a lot of tests and journeys to go yet. But what I want to do is get the message out to everybody I possibly can. I want to raise awareness that this can happen. Like I said in the beginning, cancer was the furthest thing from my mind. I want to make people aware. Get tested early when you find there is something not quite right with your body. Get that done straight away. The next one is when you go through it, try to eliminate that fear and be on a mission and move forward and say there is life after this, and I'm going for that life after this. And the other one is that do what you dream. If it's to write a book, write a book. And looking at your end goal, 80 years old on the beach was what we dreamed. That was still going to be my dream. But that journey on there is to say, to make a plan, how am I going to get there? And then forward focusing and forward thinking at that to make that happen.